So I'm back. You can tell I'm wearing the same thing. My hair is just as messy as it is in the usual video, and I just dropped that. Great. Because the original intro for this video got corrupted as I was trying to upload it, so now we're winging it. So hi, my name is Jasmine. I run the Crochetery here on YouTube, obviously, and today, well not today because it's been weeks, I was testing the new granny square all-in-one yarn from Red Heart, except you can see that I only have labels here because I had originally filmed the intro with an entire set of 14 granny squares because that's how much it gives you in a package, and then some like other colors to share and show with you. The problem is the original video was like 13 minutes long for the intro itself, and then there was the separate video of me showing you everything, which that video is perfectly fine because I just filmed it this morning. But the original intro got corrupted somehow, so now I'm just gonna go over the two labels that I do still have. It's kind of unfortunate that you can't see what a ball would have looked like because I don't have another one. I had used them all, but I bought 6 balls of the yarn, and here are 2 labels. So this one's in the color black, and you can see it's like a white and gray, tan and black granny square, and then this one is in the color lily pad, and you can see it's like a cream colored with some blues and some greens. So this is what the label looks like unfolded, and then this is how it would look going through the yarn. So we'll just go over the label. It is the Red Heart Granny all-in-one square, no color switching, keep on stitching. It has a free pattern for a vest, so the little vest here that you can see is on the back of here, and if you want to do the vest and don't want to buy the yarn for how this video turns out, then this will be on Yarnspirations' website. You can just look it up if you're curious and want to read this pattern. All of your yarn labels usually have one on the back. This one just happens to be for this vest that you see someone wearing. It comes in 3 different sizes. The first is extra small, small, and medium. The second is a large, extra large, and 2XL. And then the third is a 3, 4, and a 5XL. So those are sizes for that vest. It's recommended to use a 5.5mm hook, and I used that for the majority of the things that I made, which you'll see after this new intro, which won't be 12 minutes long now. And then I used a 5mm hook on one of the items, which turned out much better in my opinion, to use the 5 instead of the 5.5. But on the back here you can see it says 1 ball of the yarn will provide you with 14 granny squares, which for me, in my experience, it did give you 14 granny squares, and then a tiny bit over, there was like a yarn ball that was like this big afterwards that you could use. I have a pimple on my chest from seeing that in the camera. Which is enough to like sew something together, but not like something major. Like if you're doing something big like this, it's gonna be enough to sew the seams of all the squares and then nothing else really. Like you can't make anything else out of it. But it does make 14 balls, and I will say I was using the middle pole the entire time for each of the balls I used. I didn't come across any knots, so that was great. It was just a solid pull straight throughout. It does give you a recommended guide of how big it should be, about 6 by 6 inches, which I didn't measure mine. I guess I probably should have. Yeah, maybe 5 to 6 inches, but that is the one that I used the 5mm hook on. It is a medium weight 4 or acrylic yarn. So obviously you can see on the top that it will show you what the granny squares will look like depending on the color that you get, and I had multiple colors. I had more colors in this. I guess I will show you little snidbits of things that I did get, so hold on. I'm going to see a little bit extra because obviously I don't have squares anymore, but this is what the black square looked like originally. I guess you should look at this side because this side's a little bit more accurate. Obviously there is your black coloring. Here is the coloring on the other colors, which I love this one because it gives off like beachy vibes, you know. That's why I picked that one. I thought that was so cute. And then I did have 2 granny squares that were extra So here is how one of the colors looked. Obviously you can tell this wasn't supposed to happen already. And then here's how the other one looked. Ignore this 6th row here, but that's what the other one would have looked like. I'm going to reference this because I reference it in the other video because I didn't expect my intro to go wonky on me. But this is how it looks, and I was following the pictures. On the picture, it shows that there are 5 rows in their granny square, so I went with 5 rows. So you've got the first row, which is the blue, the second, which is the green, the third, which is supposed to be another green. Okay, the first row is supposed to be this dark blue here, but this square was messed up. So it was supposed to go dark blue, dark green, light green, and then the tan color, but obviously that's not what happened here. As I was using this, the first, I want to say 6 granny squares were how they were supposed to be, and then it started doing this, where there was 1 blue, and then there went 2 blues, and then there went 3 blues, and then it went all the way to the corner, and then it started off using the other blue, like you can see on this square it is. So that's just what they were kind of doing throughout. Like, it was kind of like shifting, like there wasn't enough yarn in the dye lot, like when they were dyeing the yarn, that they didn't leave enough room of each color in order to create the granny square, and that's just what I think might have happened. I might have gotten a bad batch of every ball because I had gotten 6 balls of this. I got 1 of the black color, 1 of the beach color, 1 of this color, and then 3 of the purple color because I was using those to make some bigger projects which aren't granny square related, which you will see. So I wanted to try and something out, but I guess here's this granny square. I'm sorry that this intro kind of broke. I didn't mean for it to. It was originally a 12-minute long intro, so I guess that was super long anyways, but I was showing you the granny square effect because this already is not a good sign, Yarn Inspirations. It's not a good sign to come for the other things that I have made, even though they're not all finished, but I will finish them eventually. So if you're curious to see the finished products of everything, I will leave my Instagram in the bio because I post things over there sometimes. I've been getting more lazy with it recently, and I haven't been posting over there as much. I post more here, so. But here's your little makeshift makeup intro. I'm sorry, I'm going to try to see if I can fix however it corrupted. If it does, then maybe I'll take this video down and then put it back up how it was intended to be shown. But I feel like at that point, I'm probably not going to... I'm going to try to figure it out. You're going to see another me who didn't know this video wasn't corrupted. So after a long 2.5, 3 weeks of using this yarn and having bad head, glad the camera is kind of cutting that off today. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things here with my jolly opinion. They're not all done. I wish I could have gotten them done, but it was an unrealistic expectation. There's no way I could have gotten all of this done in the time that I did. But I got a lot of good varieties here, so I feel like I have enough stuff, regardless of it being finished or not, to give a full-on prompt review. So obviously when you think granny squares, the first thing I thought of was a granny square tote bag. I've made them before. I have a pattern for one. So I figured that was the easiest. So I started with that, and you can see I used the same square that I showed you the first time where I had all of the squares done. So this you've seen before. But I sewed them all up in a tote style. And you can see how this side looks pretty nice. There's no differences among the squares. I kind of put all of the misfits on this side. The inside obviously doesn't have any of the ends weaved in yet, nor the lining. Obviously there's no handles yet because I have to go and buy a cream colored here to make the handles. So this obviously looks okay from this side, but it looks much nicer from this side. Obviously this side of the tote bag is ideally what it was supposed to look like, even though you can see here that there are some misfits. This sadly was the first ball of this yarn that I had used, and the best ball of yarn that I had used. I had bought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 balls of this to test, and out of the 6 balls, this one gave me the best result. That's kind of sad that only 1 and 6 worked, and it barely worked. But that's the tote bag. And then I thought, let me make some smaller bags, you know. So then I made some little handbags. So we'll start off with this one. So obviously you can see it's just smaller. There's no extra granny squares. I did get the handles on this one. So you can see it's just like a little purse that would stick under your arm and just fit right under it. It's like a little purse type thing. Obviously no ends are weaved in. No lining is done because I didn't have the time. But the actual purse itself is done. And you can tell looking at these granny squares that it did not work at all. This yarn did not work at all. And I actually had enough squares after making this purse. I had some left over, so then I went to Yarnspirations to see like what patterns that they were advertising with the release of this yarn, because it's from Yarnspirations, so usually they have patterns that co-line with the yarn that they're using. So they released a fanny pack, which I started. Obviously it's not done. But even with these 3 squares here, you can see 4 squares here counting, that they just, it didn't do what it was supposed to do. You can't tell the color order that it was supposed to be in, but out of 1 ball of the granny square you can get either 1 tote bag, a purse, and a fanny pack. You can see here on this square as well. This one, in my opinion, was by far the worst color to work with, which I'll explain why. Because it looks really nice, don't get me wrong, but you can tell obviously right off the rip that the granny squares don't have like a clear fluctuation of color. They're obviously just not where they're supposed to be in terms of coloring. You can't tell how the granny square was supposed to look. I think this was the original one that I made, the very first one, so this one's the most accurate to what it was supposed to look like. And then the rest just didn't look like that. Obviously, I got the strap on this one, so you can see like how the fanny pack, you know, fits and stuff. I'm going to put a zipper on this and probably buttons on these ones, but this one you could not see in. And if I were to try to find like a spot that I'm talking about, like it's fairly easy, because like it has the varying colors, and it's this color here. This, like, what color even is this? I think it's like a supposed to be white, but it's like a like really light gray color. It just doesn't work. And in this cream color, you can see bits and pieces of the black going through it, which obviously if they're dyeing the yarn, you can't control where the dye might seep into, even if it's like a lighter color, because obviously you're dyeing it black with a white. Obviously a little bit of the black's going to get into the white, but it seemed like it was like that everywhere. Like even on this square, you can see it pretty bad, all the black spots in the lighter color, but for your money, it still makes a pretty cool pattern looking for the purse and such. And then I always wanted to try making a backpack, so when I saw that they had a new backpack pattern as well for this yarn, I was super stoked. And I think it looks pretty dang cool. So obviously it's a bunch of granny squares. This is a little handle loop. Here are the straps and the flap with a drawstring. The only thing I kind of don't like, but this is my first backpack I've made, so I don't know if they're all like this, is when you pull this out, it doesn't really feel like a backpack. The flap does not fit it anymore. So if someone tugs this, all of your stuff, I feel like it's going flying. Like it's only presentable and usable whilst it is like drawstringed up, or else it just looks a little funky. It just, or at least in my opinion, it look a little funky. As you can tell by this edges here, I actually lost the yarn chicken by about this much, making the outside flap. So ignore that. Also why I made the handlebar colorful, I ran out of white. But I feel like it looks nice being the color of the squares. I feel like it's a nice pop on the bag at the top, especially since this is white and the straps are white. Mainly because I ran out of this color, so I couldn't do that. But it does look like a nice backpack, and if like hypothetically if you were to like put it on, it's gonna sit like right at your upper back and actually like be nice. So I might carry it to craft shows just by like how big it can pop out. I can probably fit my yarn in here, but the flap's just gonna look funky. But I feel like I can deal with the flap looking funky if it is a good yarn bag for going to craft shows. But for my first backpack, I'm low-key proud of myself. It looks pretty nice. Obviously, it's still not done, much like everything that I've made, But even with this yarn in the granny squares itself, regardless of me liking this pattern, you can tell that the granny squares, like, it does work, and then, like, you hit a purple in the middle of the row. Like, it does work, and then you hit purple in the middle of the row. And then it just gets worse and worse the more you go. Like, there's white on here and then nowhere else. And then some of them start with the dark purple. A lot of them started with the light purple, which it was not supposed to do. I even had one of them that only had a piece of the dark purple it was supposed to start with. So obviously it working in granny squares just does not work. Whatever, like, I cannot get it to granny square. Like, on these granny square here, which is a leftover from the tote bag I had, you can see it's supposed to do the blue, and then blue got up here, which messed up the green, which in turn messes up the other green, which in turn messes up the tan, which in turn ends up with a dark blue here, which was supposed to be here. So in terms of squaring, it ain't squaring. I do have a bit of a larger granny square here. This one has an extra 6th row, so we're going to ignore the 6th row for this purpose. But you can see the purple, it cuts in, which messes up the purple row, which means the next row has purple in it. And then you go blue, which blue ends up in the next row because it was all set off based on the first piece. And I tried, like, going back and correcting it. Like, you think maybe if I just, like, pull all of the colors and then snip it right at the purple, and I started with the purple again for this square using the dark purple, like, if I were to snip it then, because I tried this, I was like, maybe it'll reset itself. But in multiple situations of me making the granny squares, there was not enough of one of the colors in order to keep the ring of the granny square, which is not good. And I'm losing my voice. Because for something when you're trying to make granny squares specifically, it's not measuring up to the amount of yarn you do need in order to make the granny square. But don't get me wrong, the yarn looks super nice. It's still pretty good for your price. I think it's like the same amount of money as their like ombre gradient yarns. So in terms of like looking cool, as long as you don't mind the fact that it's not a precise color change, like I don't mind that it's not exact, then it's a fine yarn and it's fine and dandy. But if you want it to be an exact ring of you don't want this, you might just want to weave in the ends instead. But I did want to test how it would look in a non-granny square, because obviously you're making them for granny squares, but I want to see how cool it would look in another circumstance. So I made 2 shirts. One of them is a crop top pattern from Passionate Kelsey, which I like her little crop top patterns, but they don't fit me. So here's one of them. Obviously I made the back a little too big, but you can see the yarn looks pretty cool in a shirt format. Like, I like this more than I like some of the granny squares. Like, this just looks cool, bro. Like, if I saw somebody wearing this, I would not guess that it was supposed to be only made for granny squares. Obviously, this one's not for me, because it's 1, too big, and 2, it's not going to fit me. But I did want to make one that would fit me. So this is the last thing I have here. It's like a little distress top. There's a cold shoulder on one of the sleeves, and I ran out of yarn, so there's only one sleeve. But I think it looks pretty cool. Like, looking at it front and then back, this looks really dope. The sleeve too, it just really looks really cool with how the color changings are. I have a tank top on, so obviously you're going to see that underneath. But if you were to put this on, this looks sick. Like, in a good way. Like, this looks dope. Like, imagine, like, look how cute this looks. And, like, it looks super cute. Like, it looks better than intended for it to not be, like, shirt color. Like, it's not one of the gradients. Like, it's not the intended use for this. But I think it looks pretty cool. Like, all the little color changes. Because what happens a lot is you can see with the white, it'll create like a row or 2 of white, and then it'll be all the purples and the blues. So it'll create like a nice white block, and then it'll be a color block, and then it'll be a nice white block, and then it'll be a color block. So I think in terms of it like not even being intended to make a shirt, it accidentally makes a really cool like ombre effect, which I think is a better ombre effect than their ombre yarn, just because I feel like when you go like invigorated yarn, like the one square I had at the beginning of the video, which should be right here next to me. This is obviously too many color changes. It just looks a little bit like barf doing this many. So if I were to do this and this would not have looked pretty. But doing it in the granny square yarn, it looks amazing. And if I were to have just used straight ombre yarn, this much all would have been, no, probably, looking at the entire shirt, this much would have all been a light color, and then this would have been a dark color, which I don't want that. I want like 3 rows of the pink, 3 rows of the darker, 3 rows of the darker, 3 rows of the light, you know? I want it to look nice and fancy, and this looks nice and fancy in my opinion. I don't know if it's the purple color at all, though, but when I was working with this, because I worked with the purple one the most, it was, like, irritating my skin a little bit. Like, it was itchy, because obviously this is huge, so I'm sitting this on my lap and then working on this piece. And then each time I would get to the row, I would have to lift it up like that and then flip it and then keep going. And it was irritating my legs. Like, it just felt itchy. It felt weird. So take that as you will. That might just be a me problem of crocheting for too long with one of these colors. But I think that it looks pretty cool. I think it's a good bang for your buck because it's only like $7 and something cents. So round it up, let's say it's $8 a ball of yarn. That's a pretty good steal to like make $8 and then you could get a backpack. Spend $8, you can make a shirt almost. Almost. Spend $8 and you can make an entire tote bag. Almost. Because of the handlebars. You can't fit the handlebars. Spend $8 and you can almost make a fanny pack and a handbag. Like, it's really good for the price, but if you want that like exclusive like you wanted this specifically tan, it's not gonna work. So in my opinion, is it a good yarn? It's a good yarn. Does it do what it's supposed to do? No. Not at all. And it's not like I didn't use enough of the balls. Like, I used 7 balls, I believe. Because I had the lily pad one, the like desert looking one. I had 3 balls of the purple, and then I had the black one. So I think I had 6. I had 6 balls of this yarn. And none out of all 6 balls of yarn correctly the entire way through, which I was using the middle pull. So correctly the entire way through actually got me a granny square that didn't have this. Like, the first one would look fine, and then the second one there on 4th afterwards just would not work. It just doesn't, it doesn't, even if you try pulling it apart and then cutting the color and then trying to work from square one again, it's just not going to work. The yarn's not dyed thoroughly enough through to make enough things, and I was using a 5.5 like they had recommended. This color, which actually turned out the best out of all of the squares, I was using a 5, which maybe you could argue that this ball was like that because I used a 5mm hook and not a 5.5mm hook like they suggest. But I used a 5.5 on the other 5 balls that I purchased, and they did not work out. They just didn't look like they were supposed to. So maybe all 6 of the balls I had got were duds, but I highly doubt that because I got 6 different colors, and then I got 3 of the same color. So in theory, if I did grab a dud, the other 2 of the same color should have been better than the other one. And it was not. So obviously, if you're just wanting it for yarn, you just think the colors look pretty and you just want to make something maybe not even granny square related like I did with the shirt, it's a pretty good yarn. If you want to make something with the granny squares that you don't really care what it fully looks like, that it's the fully exact thing around, you're not OCD or perfectionist about it, then it's a pretty good yarn. But if you want that solid all-in-one granny square, it's not that, in my opinion, in my experience. Because it doesn't work. Would I recommend it? I think it's a nice yarn. I do like it. I probably will buy it again for other things. Maybe not for the exact granny square purpose. But as a yarn, I think it looks pretty cool. It looks pretty dope. And I just kind of like it. And there was no knots when I was pulling the middle pull on every single one of them. None of them had knots, which was nice. But if you want the exact granny square, I would say just skip it. Just weave in the ends if you have to. Try to learn a technique to tie knots to like hide the seams throughout. Try something, because this just it's gonna annoy your OCD if you're trying it to get the exact straight line. But that's all that I have. I showed you everything. I rambled everything that I could that I could say during the process of me trying to use up all of this yarn, which I did use all of the yarn. I just have to glue all of the ends down because I personally like to glue them when I make bags. Sew in all of the fabric linings within them, add buttons, add zippers, such not. And I am going to have to go out and buy another ball of the purple to finish the sleeve on that top because I do like that top. So I'm going to have to finish the sleeve on that. Which kind of sucks because I got to buy another ball of that now. But that's all that I really had. I have nothing else to add to the scenario. Take it as you will if you wish to use the yarn. If you do not wish to use the yarn, maybe other people who use the yarn had better experiences than I did. This is just what I had access to within my local Walmart when I was shopping and buying it. Maybe if you're buying it straight from Yarn Inspirations on their website, you're going to get a slightly better experience. I really don't know. But that's all I have for now, and I'll see you next Friday.